definition of man and not Aristotle's. Concern with who some particular individual or person is was not part of the Greek agenda, and looking for any philosophical backup for the much later Christian notion of person is a waste of time. To pinpoint this ontological switch from nature to person, let us go over Aristotle's basic view of things. For him, nothing had any real or actual being that was not embodied in matter, or could not be verified, first and foremost by the senses. He debunked Plato's idea of the existence of a divine universal form, soul, in which individual forms participate in some exemplary form that constitutes its perfection. End quote. That was Plato. Aristotle debunked this because Plato's universal was not materially embodied. Thus, its very existence could not be verified by any sensory data. He also debunked Plato's notion of a participation, a term that had great meaning for the fathers and indeed for the whole of Christianity. Aristotle did not deny the existence of a human soul, but until it was embodied in nature, it only had potential existence as a human being. For him, a real being was neither matter nor soul, but the two as a single unit, a concrete individual. In his own words, quote, "The unit, individual, is something whose essence it is to be one." End quote. The human genus, however, is more than the sum of its parts, for the union of its two substances, body and soul, makes it a third substance. This third substance being a composite of the two. As to just what this third substance is, Aristotle doesn't say. All we know is that it is the result of a union of two different substances, matter and non-matter, soul. So, the nature of man is a composition of three substances, body, soul, and a mixture of the two. If then matter is one thing, this is a quote, if then matter is one thing and form is another, the compound of these is a third, and both matter and form and the compound are substances, end quote, his own words. For Aristotle, substance is always a universal. As he says, substance means the one and a this, as we maintain. Since everything that exists is one individual thing, and everything is a substance, without which it could not exist, therefore that a thing is what it is. What is meant by individual is a numerical one, a physical numerical one. So while matter only has the potential for individuality, it was form, soul, that gave matter its actual or real existence. Where for Plato, matter was the cause of individuation, for Aristotle, it was form, soul or psyche, that was the cause of individuation. His reference to an individual, then, is neither to just a material substance or just an immaterial substance, but to the composite of the two, which composite he calls a unit or individual. A human being, then, is a composite of matter informed by a rational form or soul. That Aristotle does not separate the existence of a thing from the essence or nature of a thing pinpoints the major difference between his and Plato's understanding of real being. Thus, Plato equals that a thing exists is not what it really is. Aristotle equals that a thing exists is what it really is. As regards the ontological reality of man, for Plato, man's real nature was a universal, divine soul minus a material body. For Aristotle, it was an individual soul plus a material body. That the unit individual is, the unit in parentheses, the word individual, is something whose essence it is to be one. Means, quote, what man is is an individual unit of body and soul, a unit that, in his view, can never possibly be separated. So instead of Plato's soul being some eternal universal, for Aristotle, the soul is solely one embodied individual, a numerical one. It was not just matter alone, however, that was a numerical one. Rather, it was the form or soul that was universally a numerical one. The only reason man is always an individual being is because it is the nature of the soul to be one, the same one soul, however. So, just as Plato held to one universal soul, Aristotle held to one universal individual soul. Strictly speaking, there is no real difference whether the soul is a universal one or universally one individual. Either way, there is no getting away from its universality. As to where this individual soul came from, Aristotle tells us it comes from one's own father. For Aristotle, it is the father's same one original soul that is handed down from father to offspring one generation after another, like, quote, a flame passed from one candle to another, end quote, in parentheses, his own words. I think that's what the quotation marks mean. Nothing really individual about Aristotle's soul. It is the same one individual soul as one's father, grandfather, on down the line. He tells us what he means by soul is life, the nature of which is active movement. Form, as the principle of life in its primary actualization of a natural organic body, and the type of soul or form makes some organic body what it is, gives it its essence. Soul, form, or psyche, then, was actual being and the cause of the body's life and movement. He definitely gives priority to essence, or what something is, over its material existence. That the actual is prior to the potential means the soul or form is actual being, whereas matter only has potential being. The essence of man then is actual life even prior to being a physically embodied individual, which is not too different from Plato's view. So, for Aristotle, the soul is the cause of the body, and as to where the soul comes from, he tells us, quote, a father begets a such out of a this, and when it has begotten, it is a this such, end quote. Such means what something is, this means that it is. The begetter is of the same kind as the begotten, not, however, the same one in number, but in form, his own words. Thus, human beings are multiple in number, but one in soul. The soul a father begets is not a different soul, it only has a different body. Fathers then hand down their souls, quote, like candles passing on the same flame, candle after candle, end quote. The flame or soul is the same. It is the candle's bodies that differ. The flame, of course, does not make or create the candle. On the contrary, the candle is created for the flame. And what other function does a flame have but to burn something? If there was nothing to burn, there would be no flame. And we know, of course, what happens when the flame consumes the candle. The flame goes out. As to the origin and cause of the first or original soul, Aristotle logically chased this down to a dead end where he had to admit the existence of an, quote, uncaused cause, end quote, an, quote, unmoved mover, end quote. This is what started everything going. That there is only one soul passed down from father to father, from Adam to Cain on down the line, means every soul passed on is the same one soul. No new flame was lit. This was a father's same flame, same life, same soul. It only lit a new candle. So there are multiple candles, but only one flame. As said, however, if the soul is no different from that of the Father, then despite the multiplicity of bodies, candles, This view is not appreciably different from Plato's one universal soul, and in places Aristotle even